Hey guys, welcome back to EBA 101 Boxing. This is going to be a review about the fights yesterday at Showtime. The first main event, main event, was Hurd versus Santana. Hurd was coming off a really long layoff. He had lost his titles sometime last year, and then uh, I think he was favorite. I remember sometime last year in that fight, and then he ends up getting dropped, and then he loses the decision. Um, and now he comes back. He switches trainers, and then his style has always been like an Antonio Margarito style. He's really big for the weight class, like really big. Not that I would consider a weight bully at this point, but he's able to make the weight at 154, and he uses that as advantage typically to bully people around, push him. He has a great motor, and he's able to throw a lot of punches, and just wear and tear on the other boxer until he gets them out of there, or at least gets a decision based on just the overwhelming punches that he throws. But that backfired last time, so he started to change a trainer and started a new type of style. And in the arena, it was very obvious that everybody was um, booing and not happy with his performance. I understand that he was trying to get his, rounds in and try his new techniques and skills that he has been learning and applying. But also, it felt like most of the time he was not sitting on his punches. He was throwing here and there, but nothing really with conviction. It felt like if he really wanted to get him out of there, at least towards the last two rounds of the fight, he could have knocked him out. He ends up dropping him in the last round. But throughout the fight, you could see the big difference in size. The other guy was coming up from 147, so he's already a small guy for the 154 versus a really big guy. And it left me wanting more because it did feel like a sparring session. Many of the commentators were mentioning that. So on his way back, I know he was like saying, "Yeah, I don't care about what the fans say. I got my majority decision. I'm happy with that." But you also need to look impressive. You need to start. You can't just completely go from being a killer to like, oh, let me win by pity patting in a couple and win all the rounds, and he didn't look great at it either. He still looked very slow with his defense and things like that. Someone with around the same height and weight as him would probably be able to do a lot of damage against him. So I don't know how effective it will be, but he might maintain that style once he starts fighting maybe a Charlo or some of the new champions, Rosario that got the titles, beat the guy that beat him. So I don't know. There's gonna be a couple. The 154 division right now is all over the place. That they can't keep their titles apparently. But the second fight was Danny Garcia versus Ivan. I don't know what was up with him, but he had a very I like lime green. Actually, I'm one of the persons that loves that color, but he ended up dyeing his hair like that, and it was probably like target practice or target sign there on his head because it was so bright and you could see him where his movements are. So Danny Garcia didn't have any problem finding him, at least in the beginning. Um, in the middle rounds, I can't remember what round it was, but Ivan, and I don't condone anything. It was kind of funny what he said, but the behavior is unacceptable. But he ends up biting Danny Garcia, and Danny Garcia later on mentions in the interview that when he bit Danny Garcia. He also said Mike Tyson. I don't know if that was true, but um, that's pretty funny in the sense of you're gonna bite a fighter and then you're just referencing a fighter who did the same thing, but the ref didn't catch it. Danny Garcia was trying to let him know. Angel even called the ref over to show him the bite marks that he had somewhere in the shoulder. But Danny had come in a little heavy. He had to, take off his boxers to be able to fit the weight. Um, and so he mentioned that he hadn't realized how heavy he got until he stepped on the scale. But at this point, he was targeting some big fights: Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence, rematch with Keith Thurman, Mikey Garcia. I don't know if I want to see that. I want to see how Mikey Garcia looks, in his next fight. But who knows? I'll make a video for that next time. But there's a lot of fights that he is very close to getting, and he's not really keeping in shape. He's not keeping the weight down. He mentioned something if he doesn't get big fight, he might move up to 154. But I think that's a real big mistake, because I felt like at 140 he had pretty decent or above average power. When he moved to 147, that power reduced pretty big chunk. He has decent power now, like average, but at 154, some of those big fellas like Hurd, Charlo, the new guy that won the title, these guys are big, and Danny Garcia is not the biggest guy out there. So his power, which is something that he relies with his timing, because he's not the fastest, will be a big issue. So he needs to stay at 147 and really commit to his diet. He's come close, very close in some of his fights. Like I mentioned, I have mentioned before, or at least in some comments, that probably his two losses were up for debate. Maybe one or two rounds could have gone either way, and he could have won those two fights versus Porter versus Keith Thurman. But the only other fight that he kind of won, but he didn't really look good, was versus Herrera in Puerto Rico. I felt like he had lost that fight, so I think he got lucky there. But overall, he's always been very competitive in his fights, but hasn't been able to get the career-defining big win where he's the number one fighter in the division. I think 140 he came really close. I think that was his best division, and that was when he was really big before he started losing. But at 147, he hasn't really put his mark on this weight class. So to make a fight with Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence, this guy needs to be on top of his game, and this might be his last chance to win a title again. He's a pretty good fighter. I've followed him, for many years now, and I know he's committed, but he also needs that discipline. You don't want to be another Andy Reese, right? But the other thing I want to mention before I end this video was the Jose Ramirez fight versus Postal was at least suspended for the meantime because of in Asia they're having the coronavirus, and there were just concerns, and a lot of people were saying this has never really kind of happened. Bob Arum was like, this is the first time I do something like this because of the conditions that are happening. That fight hasn't really been promoted as much. I think Jose Ramirez in itself is not promoted as much as he should. I remember watching him probably in the last 5-6 fights. I've seen him when he has come to Fresno and to fight. Before he came in champion, he fights a lot over here. He's really big. But besides here, he hasn't really been promoted. When I watched him coming up, when he was still with Ferry Roach, I felt like he was a decent fighter. I didn't think he was elite at that point. I didn't expect him to get to this level. But once I guess he switched trainers to Robert Garcia, where Robert Garcia was able to give him more of his quality time to him, where he felt like he wasn't getting that with Freddie Roach. I don't know, his either his output or his strength. He's looked a lot stronger, and I get, he was probably hitting his prime, but his last fight versus Maurice Hooker, that was a really good fight, and I expect him to do really well in the future if he's able to get past Postal. And Taylor has been Victor Postal already, so it will give us a comparison of how the fight will go. At least similar opponent, but that's the fight that I want to see next, and maybe I'll make a video on that if that fight happens. Well, that's it for today, guys. Peace out.